What's up, Lexington? You're tuned into Real Talk, Real Change, where the streets meet City Hall. I'm your host, Adina Tatum, and I'm here with 1st District Council Member Tyler Morton. We're breaking down local government without all the fluff, so you know exactly how decisions are made, who's making them, and how you can be a part of the change.
That's right. We're not about politics as usual. We're about progress. We're keeping it real, keeping it local, and keeping you informed.
And for our very first episode, we're diving into understanding local government, how it works, who's at the table, and why it matters. And we've got a special guest in the building to help us do that. At-large Council Member James Brown, one of the most experienced voices at the table and someone who's been putting in real work for this city.
We're talking about process, power, and how you can plug in. Whether you're new to this or deep in the game, this episode is for you.
So grab your coffee, take a walk, or just sit back because real talk, real change starts right now. All right. We are talking about understanding local government, and today we're going to be talking with Councilmember Morton and at-large James Brown. First question that we want to kind of dive into is, can you give us the basic overview of how local government works in our city? And I'm going to give this question to at-large James Brown to start. And do you care if I take the at-large out and just call you Brown or James like I normally do?
Yeah, sure. So what's the question?
The question is, can you give us basic overview of how local government works in our city?
So, when I explain this to the classrooms and students and folks in the community that don't have an understanding of government, I just start at the top because everybody is familiar with the president, the federal government, and Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Then I come down to the state level, say there's the governor, and then there's the state Senate and the state House of Representatives. And then when you get to the city level, or county level, and in Lexington, we have a merged government. So there's the mayor and there's the city council. So the mayor is the equivalent to the governor and the president on that level. And then the council is the equivalent to the House of Representatives at the state and the federal level. So we, council, are the legislators. So it's 15 total council members, 12 district council members that represent specific geographic areas in the city. And then there's 3 at-larges that represent the entire community. And from there, we make and set the local policies and expect the mayor's office to execute the laws and the regulations that we put in place as local government.
I want to ask Councilmember Morton, what are the key responsibilities of the city council and how do they impact the residents?
Indeed. So the city council is just a legislative body of the local government tasked with enacting laws and policies, overseeing city agencies, and representing the interests of residents in their respective district. And that can include many different things, whether it be legislative functions, budgetary oversight, representation and policy, oversight of city agencies, as mentioned, land use and development, community engagement, and in establishing a vision and goal for the city while attempting to address the challenges faced.
Mm-hmm. So this next question I want to kind of ask to both of you all. First part for Brown, how does the council interact with the mayor's office?
It's that relationship to where we set policies. A lot of people in the community think council works for the mayor. They think the mayor is our boss, and actually we're equal. We're the legislative body. She's the executive arm of government. And we interact, if we're on the same page, great. If we're not, we just have to work through that. And council really has the authority to set the policy, and the mayor's office is there to execute it and to make sure that the policies that the council set moves forward. And I'll add another layer to that, and it's, setting priorities through the budget process. The administrative arm, the mayor's office, sets a budget, presents a budget to council. But then when she presents that budget to council, it becomes council's budget. And council has the authority to change that budget, to change funding priorities. And the mayor has, veto privileges as well, as we've seen it play out in last year's budget process, and she could veto some of the changes that council makes, but then council also has the opportunity to override. And all that played out last year in real time. But I think a lot of times we're on the same page and have a lot of the same priorities, and sometimes that we don't. And I think based off the offices that we all serve in, we get it done for the city, whether we agree or disagree. We just keep it moving forward.
Yeah, that's interesting because if you look up at the horseshoe, it does look like the mayor has all the control over things that are taking place in there. But I like that you said it's an equal body and you all work together to make decisions. The second part of that question is how you all interact with other government agencies.
Yeah. Well, let me go back real quick. Just for the optics of the horseshoe, the mayor's in the meeting and the mayor's a presiding officer of the council meetings and the council work session. But those are council meetings. There was a time when the mayor didn't preside over those meetings. And I think since the mayor is not a body of council and doesn't have a vote on council, I think that's why it functions well. But I think the optics give a different perception of what really is going on there.
Do you think that can be perceived as a negative take, like when community looks at that and maybe that they don't understand?
I think it could be. I have a lot of thoughts about perception and how people perceive things and the optics of it. And we might touch on some of that through
Yeah.
this conversation. Perception, we deal in a world of perception a lot of times because it's hard to get the real information out to the folks that
Mhm.
need it.
Well, we're hoping to do that here. Tyler, what are your thoughts on how the council interacts with other government agencies?
So I believe relationships are important, both at the local level, both with administration and on the council floor, but also through intergovernmental relations at the federal and state levels. I mean, it's important to build relationships to seek and leverage resources from all partners. And, Councilman James Brown's known for doing that. So he probably could speak a little bit towards that.
Yeah, no, I think Councilmember Morton's right. Unless we're just on first name basis for this.
Yeah, I mean, we can do more. We can do council member more, whatever y'all are
Yeah.
comfortable with. I want to
Yeah.
respect the office. So,
Yeah. No, I think we're trying to keep it real. That's the beauty of this whole thing, and especially when it works well. There's different levels of government, and we each have different authorities over different aspects of our day-to-day life. But if we can get on the same page or at least have enough respect for each other to talk about what's best for all the people that we serve, we can get some things done, especially at the state and at the federal level. And there's been some projects in our community that on some occasions that has a line that we have advocated to the state, and the state has taken it and advocated to the federal level, and resources have come down to make projects happen that benefit Lexington as a whole and our neighborhood that need these improvements and
Yeah.
projects.
So I have a question, and this question is y'all haven't been prepped for, so I'll just throw that out there. Both of you all can answer this. How do you keep, because what you all are doing is community work, right? And you were elected by your community. How do you keep your personal life and the work that you're doing for the city separate? And I know this is a little bit on the fly, but I think it could be impactful, important for someone who is seeking to be in a position like this, because I know that could be hard sometimes because you live in the community that you're working for, but you also want to have a personal life, right? Outside of the work that you do.
Yeah, I would say, well, one, my take on perception is a little bit different, but you always have to realize that the eyes are always on you in the public. So making sure that you're making good decisions and knowing that folks are looking, but understand that there is a need for a work and a personal life balance and being able to, do your hobbies, do the right thing, and just, try to be a good citizen, I would say.
I think Tyler's right on a lot of levels. One, eyes are always on you. And it could work to your benefit or it could work against you. I think what some people don't realize is that we're all just people. A lot of times we're on a stage and people expect unrealistic things out of us. But we make mistakes too. And I think that's what helps informs us on our decisions and gives us the ability to relate to regular folk. I mean, we're all regular folk. And I think a lot of times just because we're in these positions, people don't see us as regular folks, but we are. I haven't been able to find a balance between this work and my private life. My family knows it and are understandable. They understand it. But at the same time, sometimes my wife especially will put her foot down like, turn that off and get over here.
Yeah.
Or you leave that office and you come home.
Right.
But when you get knee deep in it and you know how important the decisions that you make are and how they impact real people, it's hard to turn it off. And it's hard to go home when you know there's still work to do.
Yeah.
And some folks can go home and sleep well in their beds and close their eyes at night. And you know that we have families and individuals in our community that don't have that same opportunity. So it keeps you up at night and it keeps you working, but you just got to do the best you can to try to find that balance. It's tough.
All right. So next question I'd have is about decision-making and policy. And I'm going to ask this first question to you, James. How are policies and ordinances created and passed in the council?
So I'll start by talking about how sometimes they just get started where they're birthed. A lot of times we get elected and run for office thinking about and knowing the change that we want to make. But sometimes the folks that we represent bring the real issues to us. You could come in and say, I'm a I'm going to address this issue. It's going to make our community better. You start having conversations, or you even over the campaign trail, people will say, that's not the issue. This is the real issue. And if you can address it here at the root cause, then you can get some change done. So, once somebody puts a bug in your ear or puts an initiative out there that you need to address, one of the first steps is getting it in committee, putting it in committee and start to have conversations with stakeholders about what the real issues are and what our authorities are to address them. Now, I don't want to take all the thunder out of that. I know Tyler might want to speak some to it, but yeah, once you get it in committee, you start meeting with stakeholders, you find out what we really have the purview to address. It comes back out to in the committee structure. You could get testimony from some experts, get testimony and get presentations from divisions in government. Council members deliberated amongst each other, whether it's an ordinance or a resolution that our law department has to draft to formally state what we're doing. We work through those challenges in committee, and once it gets voted out of committee, it goes to the full council, and then it opens it up for public presentation and input into the process. And then we keep hashing it out and smashing it out until we pass a policy that we think fits our community. And from my experience, a lot of times we put a policy in place after we do all that work. We may have to come back a year later and change it.
Yeah.
There may be some things in it that didn't work and some unforeseen consequences. But I think we stay nimble, flexible, and open-minded enough to know that we're not perfect and some of these policies aren't perfect and that we may have to change them.
Yeah.
That's just kind of an overshot of how that.
Yeah. Tyler, do public meetings and community input play in shaping decisions?
Yeah, I strongly believe that community input and constituents should be the driving force to elected official decision making, while also balancing the needs of the city and addressing challenges. So, public meetings play a critical role when it comes to transparency, but also accountability. It informs the public what is taking place, but also it provides an opportunity for input and even criticism to elected officials. So community input is very important, and to me, it's my driving force when making decisions.
Yeah, I think that everyone on the staff has kind of learned that about you, right? So,
Yeah, but you want to hear my motto? Well, that's going to come a little bit later.
James, do you want to add anything to that? What role does public meetings and community input play in shaping decisions?
No, I think Tyler's right. I think that's why we're here. We're here to meet the needs and to address the issues that the community needs us to. That is not always easy.
Yeah.
Getting criticized and a lot of times getting blamed for stuff that either we did or didn't do intentionally is hard. But we need the input, and I don't know how specific we want to get about incidences, but, we just recently had a public hearing and Tyler and I and I don't want to speak for you, council member, on the surface level, at the base level, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
How we get to the end outcome, it's two different paths, but at the end of the day, we're talking about and thinking about the same thing.
Right.
And there's various routes to get there, but I think at the end of the day, public input, public engagement in the process is what we're all here to learn from, and need to do our job. There's different paths on how you get there,
right,
and different methods, but I think folks need to know that we want to hear their
right,
thoughts and voices.
Right. Yeah, I did training on community engagement and how a lot of times we get criticized. And even as a leader and leading me for a nonprofit, that it's not good to be critical, but it's good to critique and have ideas. And I think that's a hard thing for people to learn, right? Is to actually come with a solution. Because you can criticize all day, but if you don't have a solution, then we can't really do anything with it, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's hard too, to separate, again, when you all want the same end result, but how you get there is different. It's a perception thing too, because people perceive you all as on opposition when that's not the case. And I think that, speaking on that public hearing, I think that was the case for a lot of that were sitting up there in that horseshoe. So
yeah, I know somebody said to me, y'all disagreed, or y'all, like we were fighting. It was like, we do disagree, but I think he's right. You know what I'm saying? I just think it was a different path. Yeah.
It's just how we get there.
The other thing too, and I think you touched on it a little bit. I'm taking a professional development training, and you have to identify some of your own personal barriers and roadblocks. One of the things I found out is sometimes when people disagree with me, I shut down in the conversation. Noticing that and being aware of that, I try to stay more engaged so I don't shut down and continue to learn something from it. But I think you got to figure some of that stuff out for yourself.
Yeah. I was at the Lexington Children's Museum and learned a lesson of the yes and. Not like no, but yes
Yeah.
and adding to instead of trying to take away from good ideas. Everybody
Yeah.
pretty much has almost good ideas. You just have to add to it, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Next question I have is how do you balance, and this is for both of you all, whoever wants to go first, how do you balance competing interests when making decisions for your district?
I'll just make it simple. I look at it kind of from a three-pronged lens. First, community input. And for my case, I represent the first district, so input specifically from District 1 constituents. Then the impact it has on our city, but also making sure the balance of is it addressing our challenges and that impact. And then lastly, just what is right, morally and then ethically. So kind of from that three-pronged lens. And then with the main goal of making the right decision, but an impactful decision.
And I think for you, James, it's probably a little bit different because now you're at large, so you representing the whole city.
Yeah, it's a lot different. Just because everything is tied together. What happens, and I've used this, I said this several times, and I stole it from Reverend Aiken. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So, when you're making decisions for neighborhoods on this side of town, it's ultimately going to have an impact on this side of town. One of the things I try to do in regards to competing interests is a lot of times competing interests somewhere in the whole scheme of things align somewhere. I think if you can find that mutual alignment in issues and situations and could get people to see where they align, I think that's where your sweet spot is and where you can actually move things. But sometimes it's not that obvious on the alignment that is there and it's possible, but I think you got to keep working. You have to keep talking to people. You got to keep trying to problem solve. But I think eventually you get there. So I think it's about being nimble, staying open-minded and flexible and keeping your ears open because you'll hear that one thing or that those two things that can get most people on page with moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I was at an event this past week and they talked about how we pretty much all want the same thing. And, we just are going about it different ways and speaking on it in different ways. So finding that spot where it overlaps and how we can get to the end result to make everybody happy.
Now, you're not going to make everybody happy.
That's true.
Yeah, you can try, but I'm here to tell you.
I know. James, what are some recent policy decisions that have had a big impact on our community?
I think it's been a lot. And I'll speak to a couple of things I've worked on. Affordable housing. We increased the city's annual commitment to our affordable housing fund almost threefold in the last few years, not counting the huge injection we got from the American Rescue Plan money. I think affordable housing, the conversation around that before I got in office, not everybody was on the same page with that. I think people knew that we need housing. I think having a conversation about government subsidizing housing could be, they could have had that conversation at multiple levels saying it's the state's responsibility, it's the Fed's responsibility. And I think we ended up here locally that it's a local responsibility as well. So, we changed that policy with the advocacy of BUILD and other organizations and finally the business community got behind it. And the way that we kind of ushered it through council, not rushing it, having the conversations, it became a unanimously passed ordinance to increase that fund. I think that's huge. I think now, as a community, housing and affordable housing is the priority. I'm going to have to think about some more because, that saying where people say, I done forgot more than.
I think affordable housing is a really major topic because we're in a housing crisis in Lexington. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have affordable housing. And I think that one of the issues is also though, is what people's thoughts are, like what is actually affordable. It's different depending on what community that you're in. So I think that's a great, and hopefully how soon are we going to fill the gap though? Do you know what I'm saying? Like
I'm gonna be optimistic and say that we're gonna keep working towards it.
Yeah.
But we're so far behind the 8 ball, it's gonna be a challenge. Another policy I'll speak to just briefly is a short-term rental. Short-term rental policy. I started the work with Councilmember Bill Farmer. Now, and when he left office, Councilmember Sheehan came in, and we've been working on that policy for almost 5 years. I think we have something pretty close to what our community needs in regards to addressing short-term rentals and protecting our neighborhoods, our housing availability, but also still providing opportunity for tourism and for small local businesses.
Yeah.
But I think that's a local policy that we need to craft for our community, not be something that's overarching policy for the state that fits every city and county.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we worked on for a long time. It has a real impact on neighborhoods. So I'm pretty proud of the work that we've done on that. Not everybody's happy with that,
No.
but
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I think that you said something earlier that even though things get finalized and ordinances go through and things like that, there's always the ability to change it and
Yeah.
make it better and improve upon it.
yeah, and we've done that
Yeah.
once, and we'll probably do it again
Yeah.
as things change.
Tyler, what upcoming policy and decisions that have had a big impact on First District, or do you want to talk community in whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk community whole. So, I ran on 3 principles, and we were just talking about this earlier, how you're tired of hearing this, and I'm get out of campaign mode. But,
Yeah.
accessible leadership, sharing information and resources, but that key one was aiming to address all of our challenges head on, both through legislation and or through leveraging funds and resources. So, knowing that recovery residents and sober living has been a big topic within the First District, but also we're seeing it citywide, that's something I believe that the council is going to be pushing forward very soon, and just with the aim of protecting our brothers and sisters in recovery while also protecting the character of our neighborhoods, aiming to be good neighbors for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so I look forward to pushing that through with the council very soon.
And I think you can speak on how community had a big impact on you really being pro that and working hard to make sure that some decisions were made as you were on the campaign trail, because that's something that you are already invested in. Right.
100%. We were talking about community input earlier. I believe the community input originated within our recovery residents challenge, basically, and at one of the neighborhood associations in the First District, Oakwood, and they seen the challenge and they started to organize, getting bodies all around the district and to say, hey, this is a challenge, but what are we going to do to address it? So they called their elected officials. They said, they called us to the table and said, we want you to do something, commit to doing it. And, as you may know, I made that commitment. So I'm just seeing that commitment through, and I look forward to putting out a strong ordinance, hopefully, that is going to protect our brothers and sisters in recovery, but also protect our neighborhood.
And just keep in mind that you can't make everybody happy, right?
And that is
We're going to
right.
do the best that we
We
can.
do the best we can what we got, but, we have to do our job at the end of the day.
Right. So, James, being that you are our seasoned official here, I wanted to ask you, who are key players in local government and how do their roles differ?
So there's a lot of key players in local government. The mayor, of course, somebody you want to get buy-in from and at least understand your perspective when you come in with either a policy or an initiative. And then, there's folks on her team. Tyler Scott, our chief of staff. Sally Hamilton, the chief administrative officer of the city, is definitely somebody that can be helpful in moving and helping to get things moving and getting the divisions on board with addressing them. What I tell council members, especially newer council members when they're just getting acclimated to city government, is the commissioners of the divisions. A lot of times, they, and I don't know if it's official, but kind of how I see it, they are political folks like us. They're appointed officials, we're elected officials. A lot of times, and some people don't like this, there's always gray areas to things. And I think a lot of times us as the policymakers, we take things, we're in the gray, and I think we take them to the black and to the white. Not racial, but just clear. We help our policies and ordinances and resolutions clear up things. But a lot of times we're dealing in the gray. And I think those commissioners, a lot of times are dealing in the gray on the administrative side. So they can be a real resource in getting things done in City Hall. I also, and I hate to, and I don't always focus on people with the titles.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the people down in the divisions that are doing the work.
Yeah.
A lot of times I go and talk to, and they don't even know they don't even know why I'm there filling them out. I just want to hear what they think about what's going on, about what policy we put in place, what policy the administration put in place, and how it really impacts people that are either using or benefiting from the service. Is it helping people? Are we doing what we need to be doing? And they'll tell you. They'll just be real about it. So I think there's some people that can help move some things in city government, but I think the people closest to the community are the ones that you could really get some information from and better inform us on how to do our jobs. So
I love that.
So
As a
everybody
legislative aide.
Yeah. So I got a good relationship with most everybody's legislative aid.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
That's where you get the real information from. Huh?
Yeah.
All right, Tyler, you have this grassroots approach to how you make decisions and prioritize key initiatives. How can residents make their voices heard and influence city council decisions?
Indeed. So, first it sounds cliche, but just calling the office, sending emails, going into the organizing, getting neighbors together or other neighborhoods together, showing up at council meetings, giving public comment, when campaign season comes, hold us accountable. So either help organize behind leaders that you feel is best, and or run for office yourself. You know, they always say if you got if you want to put solutions forward, if you have a problem, put solutions forward and be the solution. Run for office, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, democracy is beautiful. So I love to see competitive races.
I love that. Step up and be a leader yourself and support the people that are doing the work.
Right.
So this question is for both of you all. James, what are some common misconceptions people have about local government?
Yeah, there's a lot of those. But before I go into those, I'm going to circle back to other key people in city government because I feel like I missed our council staff, our core staff office.
Yeah.
Our council administrator and our researchers, budget analysts, and PIO, they are also doing a lot of good work for the city and are a good resource. Going back to misconceptions, we're responsible for everything. Everything is city government. There's a lot of things that happen at Fayette County. A lot of people think that school, like we in the schools are the same. And I think that's a legitimate misconception because in some cities they are. The school system is part of local government, but, you know, we're not the same. You know, some of the tax increases that have happened over the last few years, and they were school-based taxes. And a lot of times people think it was us, even though we've had our share of increases. There's a lot of things when it comes to streets and roads that, you know, paving issues and things that they think completely are local decisions where we have state roads that folks in the city use on a regular basis that are actually state responsibilities. And the unfortunate thing is sometimes people don't want to hear that. They just want it to get done.
Right.
And they know that we know who can get it done. So, you know, what I try to do sometimes is I'll try to be clear to folks that it's not our responsibility, but I can help point you in the right direction to get to the person that can get it done. I know there's several more, but I'm drawing blanks right now. But
we can let Tyler answer. I know he has some.
So, I mean, I'll highlight about 3. So, you know, when we think about elected officials in government, we always think about the federal and state level, and tend to think that local government may not be as impactful. But I strongly believe, and I actually got it from a great mentor of mine, that local government is the most impactful government because we're hands-on. We're the ones actually addressing the challenges. So, you know, local government makes decisions often that affect your day-to-day life more directly than the state or federal governments, including zoning, simple things like trash collection, policing, housing, parks, infrastructure, and many different things. Also, the misconception of local officials can fix everything. The reality is that we cannot. Local officials work under a very tight budget, state-imposed regulations, state authorities that we have to work with school boards and other state and federal agencies. We can advocate a lot, we can collaborate, but we cannot wave a magic wand and just fix our issues the next day. And then lastly, you know, in this case, in Lexington, city council members are part-time, you know, and we get paid part-time.
Yep.
So in many cities, you know, council members are part-time and just get paid modestly and have to balance working some full-time jobs and part-time jobs. So just a balance of a schedule.
You have an opinion on that. What's your opinion on part-time council work? Because you're not like as your part-time aide, I know you don't do the job part-time.
Right.
But you all are paid part-time, right? It's a part-time salary. You have expressed thought about potentially, like, if they were to change it to a full-time position.
My thoughts on the record and off the record is that I'm not going to be the one pushing to pay myself more. I'm doing the job that I was tasked to do as a part-time council member, and that's where we are. But as you said, you know, this is not a part-time role. This is a full-time. It takes full-time hours to address the situation.
This is real talk, real change. So
it is real talk, real change. Yeah. We are underpaid with the work we're doing. But, you know, for somebody to come up and say their first year to say, oh, yeah, I want to be a full-time council member, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Maybe down the line. Well,
I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to circle back to it.
Yeah.
I remember when I picked my son up from school one time in elementary school, it might have been middle school. He came to the car. He said, Daddy, people think we rich. I said, why do they think we rich? He said, because you're on city council. I said, you go back in there and tell those people that we ain't rich.
Yeah.
This is a part-time job. But I think to Tyler's point, I think it may come off distasteful if we're the ones advocating for more pay, but we're the ones doing the work and knows what it takes. The other thing that I think people made the point of is that it will open up the opportunity for other people, more diverse people, to run for office. If it was a full-time paid job, then they can do it. They wouldn't have to worry about, supplementing their income just because it's part-time paid.
Right.
And when I first got in office, they said, well, I guess you're here because you're one of the 3 R's. And I said, what's the 3 R's? They said, to be on council, you got to be rich, retired, or a realtor. And I was a realtor.
You're a realtor? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I'm neither one of the first 2, but I am a realtor. And I'll share this real quick. The year before I got on council, was the best year I had selling real estate.
Wow.
The next year, the first year I was on council, was my worst year selling real estate. So that just
People
tells
thought
you, yeah, well, it just tells you how much, if you're doing the job, how much time it takes and how much
Yeah.
commitment it takes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about challenges and opportunities. Whoever wants to go first, I have this first question for both of you guys. What are the biggest challenges you face as a council member?
Are you talking about issue-wise, or are you just talking about
Just in general. I mean, you can go whichever direction you want to go with it.
I'll just speak generally, and then I'll just talk about something specific. What's tough is when you have all this information, you have all this experience, and you know that you have to make a decision that is on the opposite end of what a council chamber full of people believe. They think you ought to vote this way, you ought to support this, but you can try to convey it best you can. Sometimes it just doesn't come across as that, and it ain't that I know better.
Yeah.
It's just that I think that this is the best decision for our community, even though I disagree with you. Doing that is hard. Some folks that it could run down water off their back, but for me, it's hard to just disagree with people, especially when they're passionate about it. Just thinking about, I'll just name a couple of the issues that we've had to deal with at council. Minimum wage. Minimum wage was a pretty community dividing issue for various reasons. I was on the side that supported increasing minimum wage, and we did it at the local level, and the state said, no, sir. We're taking that away from a court ruling. No-knock warrants. When we had that, it turned into an issue that people were selling it as not being supportive of our police and public safety. And that wasn't the issue. The issue was about just risk in some underserved communities with having that as a policy. That was a tough issue to address. And then I think we got one coming up, but I don't want to flame that fire. But it seems like every time you turn around, we have a pretty tough, controversial issue to deal with on council.
Yeah.
And I've just learned that it's just part of the job. You just got to put your boots on and come to work and get as much information as you can to make the best decision that you can with these issues. But it's challenging.
Yeah. And so I'll speak more, district related. I represent the 1st District, which is one of the challenging districts consisting of a very broad set of socioeconomic status and different backgrounds, a lot of our historic African-American neighborhoods. So we know in the past that these areas have been neglected just throughout time. So knowing now more than ever that we need investments, most importantly, like I said, right now. And the biggest challenge is to want to address all of those challenges, knowing that it's a process and it takes time. So I say we're just biting a bite out of the elephant daily. Another challenge that, council members may find themselves in, and I don't see myself find themselves in, but some may find themselves in, is that balance of special interests or their actual real reason why. And I said something about motto earlier, but I know my staff hears all the time. And for me, my motto is simple. It's not about power. It's not about perception. It's not about my ego. It's about serving and doing the right thing. And that's why I'm here. I think that could be.
What opportunities, so this for you, Tyler, because transparency is, one of your principles, right? So what opportunities do you see for informing local government transparency and efficiency?
Yeah.
For improving, not informing, improving.
I think communication. I think we just have to find better ways to communicate. And this initiative right here is an innovative solution to that, trying to find different ways to communicate and get folks to buy in. That's the main thing with transparency. A lot of things are happening in front of you. It's just that we're not bringing them to your attention. When you get notice of it, it's just you've already caught up in, maybe some emotions are caught up in just possibly hearsay or what somebody else said and not know the actual facts. So communication, I think, is big, and making sure that we're providing the information to you. That's why it's my second principle, providing information to folks.
Yeah. We hear transparency all the time. You want to add anything to that, James?
No, I'll just say I think Councilmember Morton's right. Communication, and that's I'm actually excited about the energy and the innovation that he and some of the new council members have brought to council. After you've been here for a little while, you send out newsletters, you send out emails, you go to Facebook, you do Instagram and other social media. You covered your base. Now let's do the work. And maybe there are other opportunities to better get information out and engage folks, and we need to be doing that.
Right.
So I'm eager to learn and see what ways that I can communicate better with constituents. Just that, it gets to a point where it just gets routine and you get your head down and you do the work. But folks need to know what you're doing.
Technology is big, so using all your opportunities, and luckily, Lexington Fayette Urban County government has a lot of opportunities for us to be able to spread information, whether that's through council reports and being able to record this podcast. So Yeah. Hopefully we are able to.
And that Engage Lexington, that new online
Mhm.
platform, send people to that direction. That's a good way to get out information that'll benefit
Nice
us.
plug.
Yeah.
Good plug.
Yeah.
All right. So, James, I got a question for you. Seeing that you are like budget chair, right?
Yeah.
All right. How does the council navigate budget constraints while meeting community needs?
I think we just try to show the community where our priorities lie and where we budget our money. Part of our main responsibility as council, or the main responsibility as council, is to address basic needs and services. We just need to make sure folks' trash are getting picked up and that we're budgeting for that. The other thing is, a lot of what we do at City Hall is, it's people business. We employ a lot of people to deliver services. We got to make sure that those folks are taken care of, that we're paying a competitive wage to them, that we're continuing to give increases to keep up with the market and to not lose talent and experience. But then we also got to prioritize emerging needs. You know what I'm saying? It's, we got folks in our communities, and a lot of times it's government's role to do and to take care of services or initiatives that are not being taken care of. So we just got to do that. We got to balance and make sure that we're taking care of basic services. And then we got to plan for the future and address needs and issues as they come up. And I'll say this too, being the chair of budget, finance, and economic development, a lot of times people just focus on the budget part. Economic development part is the piece.
Absolutely.
A lot of ways that we can empower some of these communities, these underserved communities, these communities that haven't had a lot of opportunity, is through economic development opportunities. If we can get people working, I think child care is a big, and I'm just going to say this because we can go down a lot of different roads. I think child care is an economic development issue. I think if folks feel like our children are safe, and getting, if you can provide an opportunity to educate those young people while the parents are at work and can find a job, that just creates a better atmosphere to get folks working. But child care is a big, I think, component.
Child care is big. It's expensive. I have 2 kids. I was fortunate enough to not have to pay any child care because my mother and my mother-in-law were both retired when I had my kids. Well, my mother-in-law retired a little bit later, but my mom stayed with me for the first 3 years of both of my kids, growing up.
That's
So
a blessing.
it is a blessing, but also like it's expensive. And then also trusting people with your kids, that's your pride. That's you got to protect them, right? Yeah. I think that COVID did, improve the family and work-life balance too. So a lot of people don't want to leave their kids. They want to have that be at home more with their kids. And so.
And then you got the other end of the spectrum. Some people are running away.
Yeah, they're ready to go. They're absolutely ready to go.
Yeah, I think Councilman Brown's right, everything he said. But, I'm big on, and I've said it at the Horseshoe, investing in people. That's what we need to do. And making sure we're addressing our challenges, the main challenges. So specifically, I think we need to put investments towards creating safer and healthy neighborhoods. So stay tuned for more to
come. All right. So I do the budget for our office, just FYI. He never wants to spend money. And I'm like,
yeah, I know.
It's not your money. Yeah.
So, I'm glad you brought that up. So, when we get contacted a lot about resources and asking for help financially, and some, in my opinion, may be different, but we really don't have that much money. My thoughts this year, we have a lot of neighborhood associations that are doing active programming. They're giving back to their community. And I'm big on putting the money back into the community, investing in the people. So what I did with my neighborhood development funds is I took pretty much majority of it, the big chunk, and I just divided it between those neighborhood groups so that we could invest in the people and put the money back into the community. Well, with that being said, the balance of that is now I don't have much dollars, and we have great nonprofits and great community partners who are reaching out and would love to do some good work. But then it's just a balance of how do we find the money and how do we support them. So there is some, I would say let's increase that. Some say speak against it, and there's, mixed perceptions about that. But when it comes to programming, putting money into the community and making sure that the community has access to resources, I don't think we can go against it much. But
yeah, I think we could absolutely use more neighborhood development funds, because a lot of those people that are reaching out to that are grassroots level and they're doing the work in their communities. So I wish we had more to give.
But, we'll put another tip in. We got 3 at-large council members. They represent the whole city. There you go.
I told you, y'all can count on.
Yeah.
All right, Councilman Brown.
Now, I will say that we, over the last few years, we have and continue to put a lot of money towards nonprofit capital money. Now we can do it from our council office. We got that grant that's over in social services. I think we can do more, but I think we're doing more than we have in the past.
I mean, personally, running a nonprofit benefited from that. So it's helped to increase our outreach for the community and be able to provide more for them with those capital funds. And, part of my job is to share resources and make sure the community is informed, how to apply for the NDF, how to apply for capital funds and what those things cover. So we've been really intentional in trying to make sure the first district knows the process, and so they can continue to apply for those.
And one more thing, I mean, as we're thinking about going into these next couple of years, just at the federal and state level, resources here at this local level are going to be important. And just the little resources like that are helping folks in their communities, are helping people get to where they need to go. And that's going to be a conversation for a later date. What impact does the local government, or what responsibilities does the local government have in filling the gaps and filling the voids of what is taking place at the state and federal level? And how do we do that? Are we going to think of innovative solutions, or are we going to take that call and actually serve our people in doing so? So I think that's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
That goes into budgeting.
I think it also goes into misconception too, that the city has this unlimited fund balance that they can just give out, put towards everything.
Right. Not unlimited fund balance, but we have to be very strategic.
That wasn't intentional. I just said that,
no.
funds.
We have to be very strategic when we're allocating the budget and the fund balance, because we know that a lot is going to change in these next years.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I was going to circle back a little bit about being budget chair and facilitating those conversations. Part of the reason that I wanted to be the budget chair is it was based off of the relationship that I have with council members. I think I've earned a reputation of being transparent, trustworthy, and felt like I could help provide and facilitate the budget conversation where council members felt like they had the information to make decisions. And the same with council and the administration. So, the budget's complex. So I think as much information as you can provide to the decision makers to be able to make sound decisions, I think is beneficial. And that's why I really wanted to be the budget chair the past 2 years and this year and the next year going forward. So I like being able to help facilitate that conversation.
So we're wrapping it up almost here, where I'm going to talk a little bit about personal perspective and advice. Whoever wants to go first. What motivated you to run for office, and what has surprised you most about the role?
So I think most people know I was originally appointed and passed on it the first time they came to me. I was like, no, I'm not interested.
For first district?
Yeah, for first district.
Okay.
And I told them that I got a good reputation. I want to keep it. And then I said, people don't like politicians, and I like being liked. So I told them no. Then they came back and said, a lot of the work that you're already doing in the community, neighborhood association, PTA, Chamber of Commerce, this fits right in. And I was actually surprised how much it all did interweave, and that being on city council provided an opportunity to do more and to tie those things in together. So it's been a real benefit. I enjoy doing the work. I tell you, it does get harder the longer you do it, because you learn more, you know more, and you're kind of responsible for more, which is harder. But at the same time, I don't think these seats were designed for us to stay in them forever. And I've had this conversation with Tyler. You do as much good while you can, and then you get out of the way and provide opportunity for other folks, because there are good folks that are ready to step up and do the work. And you got to get out of the way and let them do it. So, that's what I learned, that there's a lot of good work to be done. You can do it if your heart and your intentions and your mind is in the right place. But then you also need to be building capacity while you're doing it, to have other folks come up and to fill those shoes and to keep it going. So.
Yeah, I was motivated by my 3 principles and just the need for them, right? And in a critical moment, the need for accessible leadership more than ever now in the first district, the need for information and resources. The first district, as I said earlier, it's a very unique district, the information gap, but also knowing that there's resources needed at their doorsteps. But then also we have a lot of challenges. The first district, I always say that we have any challenge that you think of in Lexington, you're going to see it in the first district. In other districts, you may not have all the challenges. You may have some of them. The first district almost has them all, and I could list them if you want me to. But, basically, and just the main motivation piece is the community, I would say.
Yeah, we go back and forth, me and Tyler, because I live on the south side of town. So I grew up in Tate's Creek, and he's like, y'all don't have this over there. And I'm like, yes, we do. And he's like, I bet y'all don't have grocery carts just sitting on the road. So I'm taking pictures of every grocery cart that's in the neighborhood and sending it, because we got the same stuff going on over here. But I think the 1st District, being in the 1st District office and working in 1st District, absolutely has the most unique challenges in every challenge. Like, they're facing it all. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, but so I know y'all believe this, but you're not saying it. But the 1st District has the most challenges, but the 1st District also has the most potential.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
the tapestry of diversity, 1st District, you can just feel it. If you
Yeah.
don't see it, you can feel it. People are energized, people are engaged. I remember when all the big issues we've ever had on council when I was in the 1st District, we always had the most people show up to speak. And they just stood at that microphone and delivered. It's almost like the constituents that you serve and the people that you live with, because I think you lived in the district your whole life. I did. That they propel you to do great work. They hold you accountable. I mean, they hold you accountable like nobody's business
Yes,
holds you
they do.
accountable. But they're there to support you when you're doing what they've elected you to do.
Yeah,
So,
that's absolutely true.
yeah.
I think that goes back to Tyler's point about investing in the people. Because if that investment was there, that culture and that vibrancy would grow, and that potential could grow even more.
I'm going to take my predecessor's language. We're not number one for no reason.
Yeah.
That's not a hit to the other 12 districts. But, I do say I believe we are the heart of the city. And if you look at the 1st District and constituents in them, we got some power shakers, former mayors, possible mayors to seek, down the line. You just never know. Power shakers coming out of the 1st. So you just never know.
So I'll ask you, Tyler, since you have the mic here, what advice would you give to someone interested in getting involved in local government?
Shoot, my advice would be to just hop right in. I mean, just hop in, get civically engaged, just get information. I mean, you don't need to be super informed to be civically engaged. You just have to hop in. I'll say, based on your interests, join boards, join commissions, and like I said earlier, run for office. It's not. There's two things. You got to be 18 years old, and you got to live in the district. That's
Yeah,
it.
you're the youngest council member
I am the youngest.
ever elected.
I am, but
Yeah.
I'm pushing for some youth to take that
Take that
from me
title,
very
yeah.
soon. Take it soon.
James, what about you?
Same thing. Just get in. Get involved with your neighborhood. Get involved with PTA. Get involved with any group that looks like they're doing good work. I know when I first got on council, somebody came to me. They were advocating for something, and I said, "Well, I can work on that, but that sounds like something you could do in your PTA or your neighborhood association." They was like, "Yeah, but we don't have the status that you have as a council member." And I was like, "Well, hold on a second. I was a neighborhood president, and we did this and this, and as a PTA president, we did this and this." So don't think just because you're not on council and that you don't have a title that you can't get things done and move and shake in your neighborhood and your community. So, but I think you got to start somewhere. So if you don't jump in and run for council or some elected office, school board, then you join your neighborhood association or PTA and get it in.
Yeah.
Or join a board of a nonprofit and do good work.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to say I joined my neighborhood association, but I've not been to any meetings. But I paid the fee so that they can make sure the entries are.
That's a start.
That's a start.
And fees help.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to. Yes, go ahead. I'm
Well,
sorry.
just as we're wrapping up, I wanted to thank Councilmember James Brown for attending our first podcast, but also wanted to give him closing remarks and first give folks his social media so they can know how to get information from him, and let him wrap it up in closing remarks to some of that before Dana does.
All right. Well, no, thank you for having me, Tyler. Thank you for all the hard work that you've been doing. I know you did what we're talking about. You got involved with your own nonprofit. You got involved in your neighborhood association, and that's how we met. And then now you're in elected office in a seat that I used to sit in, and I'm proud to know you and see you doing good work and making a change and making a difference at City Hall. I'm on Facebook, Councilmember James Brown. I'm on Instagram. I think it's CM James Brown on there, and then James Brown at large. I got a Twitter account. I don't use it much.
I don't think anybody does. I
So,
don't even think it's called Twitter anymore.
oh yeah, it's called something else.
X.
Yeah. So, but I'm pretty easy to find. I tell folks when I'm running and they like, I need your contact. I said, just call 311 and ask for
Oh,
my
we
office.
learned that.
Yeah, what did I say? Yeah.
You wrote that down on a neighborhood meeting, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna start writing 311 down as my number.
Yeah, I forget my office number, but they send them straight to you. So, and then, one of the things, and Tyler had this claim to fame too, we're not hard to find. We're in the community. People see us out and about, and I think that adds credibility to what we do. So, yeah, thank y'all for having me on. I think this is great, and it's maybe
you.
something I might pick up myself.
All right. We
Yeah.
love to hear.
Before you go, make sure you follow us on Facebook at Councilmember Tyler Morton, Lexington 1st District, and Instagram at CM Morton D1.
And we want to emphasize that is the number one in both of those. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter right from our Facebook page. That's where you'll get updates, events, and ways to take action in the 1st District and beyond.
We'll catch you next time. Same real talk and same real chat.